Hello again, one more time, dear students. Welcome to my lecture. As I mentioned in our previous video, today we are going to focus on one of the very important section in literature review. That is a research gap. And welcome to my class. So the concept of the research gap, a very interesting, at the same time important, a little bit difficult. And in most of the cases, so many scholars, they miss this part because they think that this is not important. But as a scholar, as an academic editor of the PLOS ONE journal, I would like to mention the research gap is one of the very important sections for you to focus if you want your paper to be published, if you want your research to be recognized and accepted by the very good journals. Please focus on it. Today it's the contents, the introduction for the problems, research gaps, types, location of the research gap, and how to identify. In order we have a very short time, and so that's why I would like to skip some slides, and I would like to move to the most important section for the identifying the research gap. I guess everyone is with me for this case, and that's the characteristics of good research: clearly defined purpose, thoroughly planned design, detailed research process, and adequate analysis. That is a characteristics of very good research. Characteristics of bad research, which we face every time: plagiarizing others' work, lack of contribution, false manipulation of data, which is considered a crime, lack of reliability or validity of the research. That is for the bad characteristics. Problem statement: we know that every research needs a problem, so that you have to solve it. And let's look for the research gap. I would like to mention for this a very clear diagram. Look at this. Research gap is the deficiency in the literature. Deficiency means something that is missing. That is a deficiency. Okay? So the first line, look at this. What we need to know, all right? Things not found in the literature, and what already we know. Evidence from the literature that we know, and that at the end the research gap is the deficiency in the literature that we have to fulfill this gap by adding our own, we can say, research with our own contribution, by conducting a certain analysis, right? So in the case, the main concept in the research gap is it's in the deficiency in the literature. So you're going to fulfill this deficiency by your research. Importance of identifying research actually advances that drives the progress in a field of specific topic. It encourages new ideas and methods. It's innovation, right? And relevance. It ensures the research addresses and current research needs, right? It is how much it's relevant, how much this research is important. It actually, that's why important for the identifying the research gap. Someone famous said like this: identifying research gaps is essential for conducting impactful, innovative, and relevant research. It allows researchers to contribute meaningfully to their fields, drive progress, and address challenges. That's what someone famous mentioned. I don't remember exactly who was it, but I just wanted to say how much the research gap is important for you in order to follow the certain guidelines and do a proper research. We do have several types of the research: knowledge gap research, we can say the evidence gap in the research, methodological gap. It's very, very clear, and it's very, very technical case because there are a lot of types of the methodology applies in the case of economic research, and so many methods are missing. We are lack of to analyze which method is considered the best suitable for the case of this topic to analyze, because we have a lot of methods and we need to know which topic is the most suitable in order to analyze this topic, right? Imagine that you are eating with the fork the salad, or with the chopsticks, or with the spoon. So you need to give the solution. When you're eating a salad, you can also eat all of them, but when you eat with a fork, it is the most time consuming, most valuable one, right? The same applies for research, because we have a lot of methods, we have different types of analysis. As a researcher, you can use that regression, this technique, but you need to at the end give a certain technique as the best one. That's why we do also have methodological gap, theoretical gap, and so on. So basically all of them, sentence by sentences, you can mention in the last section. All of them you can mention in the research gap. You will have a separate subsection inside the literature review, and you can mention whatever you have found through your readings. In order to identify the research gap, my dear students, don't forget, you need to read plenty of research articles. After reading, you can come to the conclusion that article is missing, that methods is missing, that evidence is missing, right? Why research is important? It actually establishes importance of the topic. Research gap is important. The second one highlights the main reasons why the research have been taken. Third one, it puts forward the uniqueness of your study. Fourth one, significance of your research, why your research is significant, and creates a reader interest. Oh wow, this research is something is valuable. It can even increase the motivation for a lot of researchers, right? Okay. Does gap mean contribution? So many cases they say, okay, I'm contributing, whether they have the same meaning or not. However, identifying a research gap doesn't equal to making a contribution. Gap is something that is missing. You want to fulfill that gap. Okay? Contribution is in the field of the contribution based on the research problem. A contribution occurs when a researcher successfully addresses this gap by conducting rigorous research, generates a new insight, advances theories, or offering practical application that adds value to the field. Very brilliant answer, right? Okay, that was the continue of the previous section. We have very few minutes, so that's why I'm gonna skip the section again. How to identify a research gap? The first part, critical review of existing theories. I've mentioned before in the classes, when you're reading, you need to develop your critical thinking. That's what the disadvantages of ChatGPT, because ChatGPT is, we are having, reading a lot of information through ChatGPT, and it's actually decreasing our critical thinking. Critical thinking is always a good thing. Critical review of existing theories, that means you raise a question whether this theory is applicable in order to analyze this topic or not. Wait, this theory was not applicable. This theory probably was better to analyze another topic, right? So critical review is really important. Second section is the consistent reading and synthesizing the literature. Consistent reading means the always consistently reading the same topic and synthesizing whether this topic fully covered the problem or not. That's very important. The third step is identify your key motivating question based on your what was your question in the introduction section. Based on those questions, you need to catch it. Okay, so this follows my case. Okay, this doesn't. Okay, there is the research gap. That's how you're gonna formulate your research gap in your literature review. A well-defined and structured research problem is the heart of the research project, and it's considered heart of the research gap as well. A very good question. Where is the research gap for the manuscript is located? I would like to initially introduce it. What is the manuscript? When our paper, our research is not published yet, we call it as a manuscript. Okay, manuscript is just a paper where once it's still not published, it's called manuscript. Where it has to be located? It has to be located at the end of your literature review. any kind of the research gap has to be the last paragraph. It can be one paragraph for the case of you because you're still writing an ordinary research paper, my dear bachelor degree students, but for the case of master degree students, it will be 2 paragraphs maximum. You can include the gaps in the methodology, gaps in the existing knowledge, gaps in the theories, right? And you can write the 1 paragraph or maximum 2, and it will be located at the end of the literature review. Example of the very good research gap is mentioned here, which starts with however sentences. This is also a very example of a very good research gap because initially it starts with the keyword like nevertheless, because it's mentioning that there is something is missing in the research. That's how the examples of very good research, and that's also a very example of the very good research. You can read and write your research gap based on this. Thank you so much for your time and efforts, and we will meet on our next lecture, which focuses on the methodology section. See you next class. Goodbye.